Stewardship video. What you were just watching was a scene from the 2016 film Sully, in which Tom Hanks plays Captain Chesley Sullenberg, also known as Sully. And what you were seeing was the Miracle on the Hudson, which happened January 15, 2009, in which U.S. Airways Flight 1549 en route from New York City's LaGuardia Airport to Charlotte struck a flock of birds approximately 3 minutes into the flight. And so they were unable to reach any airport, and they had to declare emergency landing, in which you see Sully makes the decision, him along with his first officer, Jeffrey Scowls, that they're not going to make any airport and that they're going to be end up in the Hudson. And if you know the real news story or watch the movie, you know that there were 155 passengers on board and none died and there were a few serious injuries that happened. And I wanted to use this as a backdrop for this week's, because there's a couple of things I saw in the video in which we saw that Sully was obviously trained hours in the simulator, hours of reading the checklists and manuals and to be prepared. He was calm and he was disciplined. So there are several principles that we can see that will be applied to our biblical approach to finances. As always, no advice should be seen as a recommendation, as I am not a licensed financial advisor, and this is for educational purposes only. So we talked about the three biblical financial principles that I saw. First, from Psalm 32:8 in Amplified, I underline, I will instruct you and teach you in the way you should go. I will counsel you who are willing to learn with my eye upon you. So Sully, we know there's years of training required to be a pilot. There's also constant refresher courses, simulator training to prepare for just these moments that you saw depicted in that film. So we as Christians also have the Lord, the best instructor of all, the ultimate instructor, to teach us in the way we should go, which includes our finances. We also saw the second principle, in which he was calm, in fact, very calm, in handling what could be a life-ending situation with 155 passengers on board, him and his first officer, Jeffrey Scowls. So I equate that to the principle of peace, which God gives us through Christ. Philippians 4, verses 6 through 7 in the Message Bible says, don't fret or worry. And I underlined, instead of worrying, pray. Let petitions and praises shape your worries into prayers, letting God know your concerns. And here in some translations, it says the peace that surpasses all understanding. But here's the Message Bible I have underlined. Before you know it, a sense of God's wholeness, everything coming together for good, will come and settle you down. It's wonderful what happens when Christ displaces worry at the center of our life, of your life, which means that during the pandemic, some of us have prospered, some of us have survived, some of us, unfortunately, have gone through situations where we're still worried. There's situations where there's been a loss of job, but in Philippians, God directs us to pray instead of worrying. We have that sense of calmness like we saw Sully. So we have the peace of God within us, which, as some translation says, surpasses all of understanding, which includes our understanding. So we may be in a situation we don't understand why we're calm or at peace. We don't even understand it. But that is one of the promises of the Lord. And then finally, the third principle I saw was discipline. And I've got a picture here, which is to me is humorous. I don't know which one is more disciplined or has no fear. The cat that you see walking by, all these German shepherds, or are they demonstrating the discipline of not attacking the cat. So 2 Timothy 1 and 7 in the Amplified Bible, where I was saying that Sully was disciplined in following his checklist, him and his first officer following what they were trained to do. 2 Timothy 1 and 7 in Amplified says, "For God did not give us a spirit of timidity or cowardice or fear, but he has given us a spirit of power, of love, and of sound judgment, and I underline this one, personal discipline." And in Amplified, it says abilities that result in a calm, well balanced mind and self control. So we have that ability based on us being believers. God has given us that spirit. So the three principles that all can be applied to our financial situation is we have the ability of wisdom and being trained by the Lord. We have calmness and peace through the Lord. And he has given us a spirit of not to fear, but of self discipline, the ability that result in calm, well balanced mind and self control. All of these important principles when it comes to our finances. And I wanted to mention a resource as I've been doing previously, CopelandFinancialMinistries.org. And I really like this slide that was in one of his classes that I took a picture of, that we have the ability to follow these principles that are all biblical principles when it comes to our finances. I especially we have the ability not to covet others. That's number 4, Exodus 20, verse 17. We have the ability to learn to be content in Philippians 4:11 and 13. We have the ability to have a godly mindset as in Matthew 6:19 through 21. So this is a resource I commit to you. It's free. If you choose to buy his book, it's like $15 that you can get emailed to you through he'll email through a PDF, but the actual taking of the classes, there is no charge for that. And he just asks, if God lays it on your heart to do a donation. So let's transition over to this week's look at the market and the economy. There are a couple of interesting earnings that are happening the week of the 15th. Those are Lennar Homes is reporting, Five Below is reporting. So we're looking at the housing market, which I talked about could be an interesting place to invest. Five Below, we'll get a look at the consumer market. Dollar Tree, FedEx is going to be one of the larger ones that are listed here. Accenture is actually a trade I'm in this week, so it'll be interesting to see how they report. Reminder of the disclaimer, these are not recommendations, but are for education purposes only. Make sure you do your research. I have a friend that was interested in this particular exchange traded fund called Buzz. I actually have been looking at it also. This is one that's new, so there's not a lot of chart activity on it, but it's an exchange traded fund that has an interesting concept behind it where it's looking at social sentiment. So it could be tapping into like a Reddit where people are following what's being discussed on Reddit when it comes to stocks, and they're investing that way. Well, this is an exchange traded fund that's looking at this particular way of investing. Now, I know it says here 5-year annualized return. I don't think that's the ETF Buzz. I think they're taking these holdings and looking at what the annualized return would be, because this is still a relatively new ETF. So the top holdings right now, you can see like DraftKings, Twitter, Ford, Facebook. These would all have been based on social sentiment, meaning there's a buzz around these particular companies. And so that's what it's choosing to invest. So that's Buzz. Again, do your own research. The other one I think to be looking for, Coinbase is the exchange that is the most popular for trading cryptocurrencies. That's your Bitcoins or your Ethereums of the world. So you can trade it on this app. They are looking at becoming a initial public offering, or you hear it referred to as an IPO, meaning they're going to become a publicly traded company. There's no date set yet for the IPO, but it's expected this year, and it's expected to be trading under the symbol of coin. So when you're talking about an IPO, that, of course, a lot of volatility, a lot of risk involved. So I wouldn't be looking at putting amount that you need to use later on for cash funds. This would be something that you're willing to lose the full amount, because you don't know when it comes to these initial public offerings. But remember, Twitter was a public offering at one time. Facebook, and I can remember when Facebook was $40 a share, and it's well past that now. Netflix, all these were initial public offerings. But sometimes you don't have to wait years and go through all the different ups and downs. So Coinbase may be one you look at as investing once they announce that date. And here's another I would commit, and I talked to you before about Kathy Wood. Well, Kathy Wood is the money manager for ARK funds. And right now, I think it was Warren Buffett that said he wouldn't bet against Kathy Wood right now. And she is one of the best money managers out there. And she has exchange traded funds. And these are some of the things that she's been investing in. And you'll notice those were also in that Buzz ETF. Well, here's her funds, and she's got different offerings depending on what you may interested in. Now, here's one in genomics, and this is a way of looking at investing in companies that are doing cutting edge work in the medical field. You can do one in financial tech. That's where your PayPals and your Squares may be in. So take a look at those funds. It may be something that you're interested in, because you'll get a mixture and diversity like a mutual fund. But unlike a mutual fund, these ETFs, if we talked before, exchange traded fund, trade like a stock. So you have more flexibility on being able to go in and out, instead of like a mutual fund that tends to be end of day or once a week, you may be able to come in or out of it. Where you would research is their website is ark-invest.com. Again, reminder, these are not meant as recommendations. Make sure you talk to whoever you use as a financial advisor or do your own research. The last thing, I've been talking about a copper play, which we've said before. Copper acts as a base when it comes to construction, when it comes to automotive, manufacturing. So this is a good indicator of the economy. And you can see copper, which is the main product of this company called Freeport McMoran. And this is the way you can play copper, unless you're doing futures, which is another way to do it. But FCX is a way, and you can see it's still in an uptrend. It had a pullback, which if you grab that, you would be probably happy now, because it pulled back down to about $32.50, and now it's trading on Friday at I think it closed at $37.42. So you would have had like a $5 increase if you got it on that pullback. Look at the overall market, and as I said last week, Bidenomics, $1.9 trillion is hitting the economy. That's going to affect the economy as we know it, which is jobs, consumer spending, but it's also going to affect the market, which is stocks and companies tend to go up, as you're seeing that effect here. We ended the week on a 1 year, 9-month high. And you can see this is a line I drew. We're still in an uptrend. We had some points of sell-off that we talked about in the last couple of weeks, but then we're now back on an uptrend. A couple of things, as I said before, happening. As I'm making this video, there's been reports over the weekend that stimulus checks are hitting individuals' bank accounts. So it's $1,800 for an individual, possibly, $1,400 for an individual, possibly $2,800 for a family. So you can see that is starting to hit the economy. A lot of people are going to spend that on essentials, which will drive up places like Walmart or Kroger, But there's also a survey that was done with about over 40% of millennials saying they're going to take the full amount and put it in the market, because in their case, they may not need essentials and they're going to put it in the market. And that's where your Robinhood traders will come flying in and they'll push the market up. And I also said some people who are getting income tax refunds, that could be happening right now. And that goes into the market, into the economy, and as well as some companies are paying bonuses out. All of that acts as a push on the economy and on the market. Last one is QQQ. We saw there was a lot of sell-off happening with the technology. It looks like it hit a level of support, which we talked about here in yellow. It's still in an uptrend, had some sell-off on Friday, but the last couple of days it had been moving back up again, but it sold off. And that line you see here is what we call the 21 exponential moving average. And that what that is 21 days of the average prices. And some people have a trading style or philosophy that if it goes below the 21, that could be possibly a correction. And if it recovers and goes above it, you could be heading back up into an uptrend. So that's just a simple way of looking at it. And you can Google 21 exponential moving average and just read about it. So that ends this week's video. And remember, we talked about the three financial principles that are biblical. We saw in the little small video vignette. And these are all can be all applied to our finances. These videos are archived out on YouTube. Just do a search under my name, Al McClaney. As always, you can email me, ask questions, or any suggested topics that you want to see going forward. So until next week, as my pastor always says, remember to keep a good spirit. And as we say on these videos, remember, God is owner. Therefore, as Lord, we follow his principles and do what he says, but we act as his faithful stewards.